Hi, I'm Cindy Hansel from the Cradle to Career data team, and this is my presentation on logic model, plan the work, work the plan. So here are just a couple of ways to think about a logic model. A logic model is a simplified picture of a program, initiative, or intervention that is a response to a given situation. It shows the logical relationships among the resources that are invested, the activities that take place, and the benefits or changes that result. It is an iterative tool useful for planning and evaluation purposes. So I'm going to start with a very simple example of a fall family escape. And here's the situation. The winter is coming soon and the family is already feeling the walls closing in. All 4 family members have retreated into their home offices or bedroom classrooms. The urge to flee toward an outdoor adventure is strong. They would all like to do some off-road biking and hike in the woods. Mom would like to photograph the fall foliage, and Dad would like to test some open fire recipes yet this year. His goal is to be able to do all of their cooking on an open fire. So from that situation, this is what we want to happen. When the family gets away from home and spends quality time together, engaged in the outdoor activities of their choice. And in order to make those things happen or achieve those goals, these are the actions we need to take. So they need to drive to the North Woods, set up a campsite, cook over the fire, ride bikes, hike, and photograph foliage. And these are the resources that are required to make those actions happen. So we need the family members, of course. We need a budget, we need food, mountain bikes, camping gear, and camera. So here we have a classic logic language, the if-then statements. So if we have the family members, budget, food, mountain bikes, etc., then we can do these activities. We can drive to the North Woods, set up campsite, cook over the fire, etc. And if we do those actions, then we can achieve the outcomes of the family gets away from home and spends quality time together, engaged in the outdoor activities of their choice. And here are additional detailed relationships and dependencies. For example, if we have a budget, we can buy food. We can also buy gas to drive to the North Woods, and we can also pay for the campsite when we get there. Also, if we have food, then we can cook over the fire. And if we have the camping gear, then we are able to set up the campsite and we have the tools we need to cook over the fire. Another example, just we're going to ride bikes, we need mountain bikes. And then we also have, in order to cook over the fire, we need to set up the campsite. In order to take the fall foliage pictures that Mom wants to take, it'd be best to go on a hike and find those opportunities. So this is kind of the whole model with the original situation statement. And this shows a more formal template of a logic model. So we have our inputs, and with our inputs, we're asking ourselves, what do we invest? And these are just some ideas. The bullets are ideas. It's not an exhaustive list of ideas, but just kind of prompts. We have staff, volunteers, time, money, etc. And then the activities and the participants. So what do? We train, we deliver services, develop products, develop curriculum, provide mentoring, facilitate meetings, collaborate, communicate, etc. And we think of who participates. So we have our clients, our customers, agencies, employees, volunteers. And then we come to outcomes, results, or impact. These, I put all three of these in there. It's a language, and in this, we mean the same thing when we talk about outcomes, results, and impact. And basically, we're asking ourselves, how is anyone better off? That is how we determine the outcomes, results, or impact. So we have short-term impact, intermediate-term impact, and long-term impact. And I find very helpful to think about these words that are in parentheses as prompts for these short-term, intermediate-term, and long-term conditions. Or long-term is what conditions. I think of what conditions change: social, economic, health, civic, environmental. Intermediate term, I think of what actions are actually being made, what behaviors are changing, practices, decision-making, policies, social action, so all action-oriented. Short-term is very easy if you think about learning. What needs to be learned in order to continue on to the other intermediate and long-term outcomes. So we're thinking of awareness, bringing awareness to clients, bringing knowledge, shifting attitudes, developing skills, creating opinions, aspirations, and motivations. So again, I want to just kind of stress, this is talking about how is anyone better off with our programming. So the situation statement is critical to your model. This is the very first piece to understand. The situation is the foundation for logic model development. The problem or issue that the program is to address sits within a setting or situation which is influenced by social, political, environmental, and economic conditions. So take time to understand the situation and carefully define the problem within that situation or setting. So without that, there's just no foundation or guidance for your hard efforts and intentions. So the situation is a primary piece. So the advice I give about the situation statement is to be as thorough and detailed as possible, and then write a concise situation statement. The details will help guide your direction in designing your programming, but it will also inform responses for funding proposals. So here are the 7 prompts that will help you understand the setting in which your problem lies. So number 1, what is the problem, the issue? Remember that sits within a situation or setting of influences. Why is this a problem? So what causes the problem? Keep asking why to get to the root of the problem. For whom? For whom does this problem exist? And be specific. Who has a stake in the problem? So really, who cares whether it is resolved or not? That's kind of a good question to prompt yourself in understanding the stakeholders. Who thinks it's important? And what do we know about the problem, issue, people that are involved? What research experience do we have? What does existing research and experience say? So really, this is talking about local research as well as broader research. Really pick apart that problem, that issue, and what do we know about it? What can we say about it? Number 6, what are the likely consequences if nothing is done to resolve the problem? I find this is a really good one to detail the what if we don't do anything? What's going to happen? What will happen if we don't intervene? And number 7 also helps really define the setting of the problem. So what other projects address this problem? So really know your local environment and how do you fit in. You might find there are others making similar efforts. You might find resources to share. And just really better understanding the situation and what problem you're trying to solve. So yeah, like really know your local environment. So if you have thoroughly worked through the situation statement, excuse me, you'll find that you already have defined your long-term outcomes or results or impact that you want to see. It may be sort of inverted, but they're there. So for example, like if the situation shows that too many teens are smoking because they don't understand health risks, the outcomes might be teens learn about the health risks of smoking, they commit to a smoking method of quitting, and they ultimately quit smoking and live a healthier life. So really you're defining your outcomes within your situation statement. So plan the work and work the plan. What's this title getting at? I'm going to be talking a little bit about logic flow versus logic design flow right now. So the logic flow is a means to ends, and logic design flow is ends to means. And I'll explain that further. So here's the flow of your model or your operations. So it really shows the flow of your programming or your work. So we're looking left to right. We have inputs, which feeds the activities, which then produce the outcomes, results, or impacts. It is a means, inputs to ends, outcomes. That's the direction, left to right. And here's the flow of designing that programming model. So as we're designing it, it is an ends to means directional. We start with the situation and determine what we want to happen. What do we want to happen? What do we want to change? What would it look like after our programming takes place? How is anyone better off with our programming? Then we need to understand, based on those outcomes, what actions do we need to take in order to achieve those outcomes? What do we need to do to achieve those results? And that defines our activities and our participants. Then we need to understand what action, then we need to understand what inputs we need in order to accomplish these actions. What do we need to invest? What resources do we need in order to do our action plan? So that's kind of the flow from right to left. Of course, starting with the situation on top. So let's take a look at our outcomes, results, and impacts, as this is the next step in our design flow. And again, when determining what any of the outcomes are, it helps to have this question in mind: who is better off and how? So we also ask prompting questions: what will be changed or improved? What will beneficiaries say as the value of the program? And what will be different as a result of our initiative? I like to identify the long-term outcomes before the intermediate and the short-term, but it may be beneficial to really look at all of them as a sequence. For long-term, these are just some of the prompts: the social, the economic, health, of course. And what I find very helpful is, again, to look at this as conditions. What conditions do we want to change? For intermediate term outcomes, we're asking the same question: who is better off and how? And again, these questions remain the same: what will be changed, what will beneficiaries say, and what will be different as a result of our initiative. And yeah, I think, again, I like to think about action. What behavior, what action are we looking at to change or to add? Here again on the left are some prompting ideas. So intermediate term outcomes include changes that follow the short-term outcomes, such as changes in practices used by participants, behaviors exhibited by people or organizations, policies adopted by business, governments, and organizations, technologies employed by end users, management strategies implemented by individuals or groups. So just some ideas of things to think about: what actions are going to change because of your initiative. And let me go back to the long term, because I didn't read through this these promptings, which I find help a lot. So long-term outcomes follow intermediate terms when changed behaviors result in changed conditions, such as improved economic conditions, so increased income or financial stability; improved social conditions, so maybe reduced violence or improved cooperation; improved environmental conditions, air quality or reduced runoff; improved political conditions, participation or opportunity. And again, I just want to stress that these prompts just may spark some ideas of direction of, where to take these. It is not at all an exhaustive list of prompts, but it's just something that helps guide our thought process. And then, so moving to the short term, and this is all about learning. Again, we're still answering the same question: who is better off and how? So this short-term outcomes may include a sense of awareness, so customers recognize the problem or issue. So in the teen smoking, they recognize that there's a health issue with smoking. The knowledge: customers understand the causes and potential solutions. Skills: maybe we want the customers to possess the skills needed to resolve the situation. And create motivation: customers have the desire to affect change. And customers believe their action can make a difference. That's a good one. So these are all ideas of where, another question to ask yourselves in thinking about the short-term outcomes is, when you bring clients into your programming, what what needs to take place right away? What's the first thing? What's the first step? You know, sometimes that's simply becoming comfortable in the environment, or, you know, but think about it in that way. What's the first thing we want to impress upon our clients? How do we bring them into our programming? So again, here's the, I'm using the teen smoking example to show the if-then relationship, the classic logic language between the outcomes. So if we can accomplish these short-term learnings, if teens learn how unhealthy and addictive smoking can be, and if they learn about different methods of quitting the smoking habit, then we can move toward the actions. The actions being the teens may be able to choose the best method of quitting for themselves. They understand it enough that they can reflect and choose what best works for them. And then they commit and practice a quit smoking regimen. And if we can accomplish these actions, then we can achieve the long-term conditions. So the long-term conditions being teens are smoke-free, teens live a healthier life, and they're even might be empowered to influence people around them to quit or never start smoking. So it's kind of the flow, even the if-then language comes into play with the outcomes within these three different terms of outcomes. So here's some outcome criteria when we're thinking about our outcomes and coming up with what we want, what changes we want to make. It's just kind of good to think about these 4 points. Important. Do the improvements represent a significant change? Apply the who cares test. I like this. It may be achievable, but does it matter to anyone? So I like that who cares test. Reasonable. Is it a logical flow of outcomes? Does it make sense to go from the short term to the intermediate term to the long term? And can positive changes be made within the time frame of our programming cycle? So think about maybe how long our clients or customers are in our programming, and does it make sense that can we actually make those changes in that amount of time? So keep that time frame in mind. Realistic. Is the program putting out enough effort to achieve the changes predicted? And basically, is it realistic? And then what are potential negative effects of the programming or initiative? Are we thinking through the possibilities of effects of the programming? Sometimes we have things happen, negative things happen that we aren't expecting. So it's good to kind of think through that, play devil's advocate, and get yourself in that mindset of what are some effects that we're not thinking of, potential effects. So now we can look at step 5. We've looked at the outcomes after our situation, and now we're going to move on to step 5. What activities should we provide to accomplish the outcomes that we have just established? So keep in mind, every activity should point to at least one outcome or another activity. Again, you need that connection. For every piece of your logic model, you need a connection both, you know, and here we need a connection before and after that activity, but just keep in mind we need those connections. So, and the questions we want to ask when developing our activities is, what do we do? Who do we reach? Who participates? And what do we create? So this planning will have a lot of details, because this is the work that you're doing, and you're gonna have a lot of details. You'll have to find the threshold for what is too generalized and what is too detailed for a logic model. The rule of thumb is to be able to fit the whole logic model picture on one page. A very simple but thorough display of your working operations. But what I do is I store the details in a very orderly way, kind of behind the scenes. So I have as much as I can, I put as much detail as I can in the logic model, but I still want to be general enough that it's clear. It's a clear picture of what we're doing, a simple picture of what we're doing. And keep in mind that, again, it's an iterative process, so your logic model will change as your programming changes. As you keep coming back and analyzing if your action plan is working, then you will be making changes, likely be making changes to your model. So the more, just to relate that, the more generalized you are in defining your activities, the less likely you'll have to change your logic model. If you have a lot of very, very little details about your activities in your logic model, then as those small details change, then your logic model will have to change as well. So that's just something to keep in mind. But just also, it is important to understand that it's an iterative process, and it will change depending on like the cycle of your timing, your programming. So then we get to inputs, step 6, and these are our means. What means do we need? I find it really useful to use these terms in bold as headers of lists of resources. So if we have human resources as a header, I'm going to put staff and volunteers under that header. So human resources such as time invested by faculty, staff, volunteers, partners, and local people. Fiscal resources, appropriated funds, special grants, donations, user fees. Other inputs required to support the program are such as facilities and equipment. And a knowledge base for the program. This is something that people may not think about necessarily as inputs, but if you need teaching materials, curriculum, research results, certification, or learning standards, that's really trainings, things like that. And then involvement of collaborators, which is really important to understand, especially when we're thinking about the setting, the situation statement, who's collaborating with us. And it's really important to understand your collaborators, local, state, national agencies, organizations involved in planning, delivery, and evaluation. So, so that's a kind of important header, I think, that helps us think about how we're using other programs and resources within our community. And again, I'm going to reiterate this linking aspect. So every input should point to at least one activity. And yeah, that keeps that, everything's connected. So there it is. That's the ends to means, starting with the situation and outcomes. Outcomes being the ends, moving right to left to get to the means. So what do we need? And this is our design. This is how we design our programming, from ends to means, versus our means to end workflow. With these inputs, if we have these inputs, then we can do the activities. If we have activities, we can produce these outcomes. So a very left to right, means to ends workflow. Okay, and here's just a little bit about measurement. The logic model is set up beautifully for understanding what measurements you might want to gain. So keep in mind, everything in the logic model can be measured. But should it be measured? Do we want to measure everything? Probably not. But your organization will determine what you want to measure. What is the most important data to observe? What are you working on? What are you really focused on? What specifically are you interested in watching change? What change in particular are you looking at? So in thinking about measurement, we're going to go back to this: who is better off and how? So that's an easy prompt for measurement. And all these outcomes, what do you really want it to look like? And ask yourselves these questions when you're looking at inputs and activities. How much did we do, and how well did we do it? So going back again to the simple family escape, here are just some ideas of measurements that the family might be interested in observing. How much did it cost? That's a very common, like, family vacation question or observation that the family would want to know. How many meals did we prepare? How many family members came? How many miles did we bike, and how far did we hike? Maybe the kids have Fitbits, and maybe they have competitions with their friends and they want to record that. So they're kind of interested in those details. So those are all kind of, how much did we do? How well did we do it? Might be, what % of meals were prepared on the open fire? If we have a goal of 100% of meals being prepared on an open fire, how many did we actually accomplish on this trip? And how long did it take to set up the tent? Maybe we have a new tent and we're practicing how long it takes us to set up. So we're interested in that. And then these are, who's better off? Who enjoyed the drive? Do we have good family conversation in the drive up and the drive back? Who had fun? Pretty basic question. How do you define that? How do you measure that? Who got to do what they wanted? Who feels better prepared to face winter? Who would like to do it again next year? So those are just some ideas of, you think about how much did we do, how well did we do it, and who is better off. It's kind of a beginning of a discussion of performance measures and data collection. And I just wanted to touch on how the logic model points directly to the data that you might want to collect and observe. So it's all right there in your logic model, and you can just really determine what are the important questions to ask yourselves and what's the important data to collect and to observe. So that brings my logic model presentation to a close. I hope it was a little informative and helped you out a little bit. Plan the work the plan, and hope that means a little bit more to you now. But please reach out, and if you have any questions or you just want to have a logic model conversation, discussion, I always love to have those discussions. I'm at cindyh@c2cmn.com. So thank you for watching, and I hope you have a really great day.